couple of things that are intriguing to me. One is, you have a pretty staid corporation like Comcast using your platform, right? Um, and when I work with executives around like, customer experience or employee engagement, I'll say, because I think that they're both connected. If you want to create a great customer experience that's empathetic, that's respectful, that's compassionate, and so on. And I always, United Airlines is always my poster child in terms of the bad example versus like Virgin. And I go like, if we were going to brainstorm all the different ways we could get someone off a plane because we got it overbooked, I bet the 99 things that we would come up with would not include dragging the guy off the plane and knocking his teeth out, right? And you're going like, so what would compel someone to think that, yeah, that's actually a valid solution for a paying customer? And then I realized, and I said, you can't give what you don't get. If
Yes.
you're not in an environment, in a culture that cultivates behaviors of compassion and
Right.
empathy and thinking about other people on a regular basis, it's like a muscle. And if you don't use it, then you could do something radically awful like that because you go, what were you thinking? And so to me, they felt like they were connected,
Oh,
right?
they're completely
So,
connected, Margarita. They're
yeah.
complete. And so, one of the things we talked to the Comcast leadership team, and by the way, I got connected with Comcast through my cable guy.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
that's how that
Yeah.
came. He actually was at my house fixing the cable that had been cut by the lawn guy, and he asked me what I was doing. I just explained the whole platform. I said, "Man, we need that at Comcast." And sure enough, he said, "I'm gonna talk to our senior VP." 2 weeks later, I get a call. Hey, we're gonna have you come in. They thought I was a motivational speaker, which that's not what I was advertising, but that was the beginning of this relationship, which is continuing to this day. My point though is that, when I talked about the platform, I said, look, it's hard to ask employees to deliver an experience of compassion and great service experience if the employee feels like they haven't felt the same experience from their management team. So, in order for them to feel like they want to use what they call their discretionary effort, the
Mhm.
effort that they don't have to do or to apply, it's great if their management can use their discretionary effort to show them by modeling it what that looks like, right? To
Yeah.
go a little bit beyond what's required is, in essence, what we're talking about. And it doesn't have to be, again, grand gestures. It can be a
Mhm.
series of small things, not grabbing someone off the airplane and dragging them down the aisle, as you said.
Mhm.
It can be small acts of kindness and consideration to make
Mhm.
them feel like they're a human being that you're seeing. I just think that, sometimes we get so focused on KPIs that we believe that the we forget that the real K in KPI is kindness, right? We got to start with that K, right? And
Absolutely.
by doing that, we can dramatically change the experience.
So your technology is so powerful because you kind of coming in and I mean to me this is sort of like peace innovation in action. This is peace building in action. When we think about where we spend a third of our life, it's
Hmm.
at work,
Hmm.
right? It has a huge influence both in terms of interacting with other people in the organization, or our vendors, our customers, and so on. That's where we're interacting with people who are different from us. They're not our family members, right? They're the other. And having this platform where you start kind of getting people into the habit, these tiny habits of kindness and care and paying attention. I mean, like okay, yeah, there's this technology and it's on your app and it's going to tell you to encourage your coworker, but it's still important. Still a powerful trigger to get you to be mindful about,
Yeah.
I want to be good to be other people. And to me, that is so exciting that you've actually figured out a business model. You've got a platform. Because we talk about kindness and respect and things that they're kind of like these externalities. They're like these vaporous nice to haves, right? Peace is this vaporous abstract thing, sort of like clean air. It's like, how do you put a price on it? And so people don't invest in it, but you've actually created something that you've made it tangible,
Well,
right?
that was the actual big thing for me, in that, even with social media, and I think, social media properly applied can be a beautiful thing. And a lot of the social media focuses on helping you to find and see people doing things. EncourageX is all about grabbing the baton
Mhm.
after you find and see people doing things, to then say and do things that help that relationship. Once you have met or see people that you want to connect with, we are about engaging. We're about
Mhm.
growing the relationship. We're about shining light and water and fertilizer to nourish the relationship. And even when I think about my friends at Bumble, that amazing platform, it's all about helping women make the first move, right? Which is
Right.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
My question is, once you meet the person or find the person you want, how do you fertilize that experience, on both sides of the equation? And encouragement is a great, I'll call it a currency, that
Mhm.
the more you exchange it, it's so powerful to me, Margarita, that the investment that you make in encouraging someone today is worth more in the future. Like, and
Yeah.
if you do it consistently, the total value, like if I go into my, my Kellogg, note section of all things I learned there, it's the value loaf, right? It's the things that you get beyond what you're expecting. That's value. That
Yeah.
makes you feel like the person actually is a real friend because they're doing more than what is expected. And
Mhm.
today, fortunately or unfortunately, actually being a good person in a consistent way and showing that person that you will be there for them, it's priceless, right?
Yeah.
I even think about, I was asking my wife the other day, I said, if you were to find a way to help our daughter go from a 5 to a 7 on her overall
Mhm.
happiness, what would that be worth to you? And it was significant digits. I'll put it that way, right?
Well, we
And
know how much it costs when people are miserable, when they're unhappy, when they're isolated, when they're depressed. I mean, you can actually put a figure on that in terms of
yeah,
mental health. You can put a figure on that in terms of loss of productivity if you want to be
right,
that crass. It's like we
yeah,
just see human beings as simply, engines of production and, like we just want to see
yeah,
how much work output you get. We could be that crass, right? But if we value people just because they're alive. Generational cost loss or the
yes,
intergenerational value creation, right?
sure,
Because if you're a high functioning happy adult, you can pass that on to your children and to
yeah,
your community, and that's such a force multiplier, and we tend to underrate that. How do we I know Mark Nelson, who founded the Peace Innovation Lab, he's been working on reimagining finance and capital markets. And one of the things that he and I have been having a lot of conversation about is like, could we create a new asset class around relationships
mm,
where you invest in relationships? And because the relationship is the underlying asset
well,
in everything that we do,
it's
a
funny you say
building is
that.
worthless if there are no people in it interacting with each other and being in relationship with each other. So why don't we get down to the heart of it and say, how do we invest in relationship?
Well, your point is, it's a non-trivial point, Margarita, in that, when I talk to the CFOs at companies,
Mhm.
it's pretty well established that, people talk about sweating the asset, being a physical tool. It almost seems like the CFOs just kind of give a pass to the human experience, the um, retention rates, the um, HR cost of all of the diversity, equity, and inclusive issues. Like, all those things are like heavy, heavy costs. But the CFO just kind of says, "Well,
Eh,
I
I
understand
can't do
that.
anything about it.
We're just going to take that as just an unknown variable. Don't know how to fix that, right?"
Mhm.
We're starting to show with our model, and we have Dr. Y. Joel Wong from Indiana University that helps us with the psychology. He's like one of the leading experts in encouragement. You can actually track, as we did at Comcast with the Net Promoter Scores, actually start to increase just with the
Mhm.
employee to manager relationships, that massaging and nurturing that relationship has a dramatic impact. And they even had a sense as to what the cost was for losing an employee. And if they could actually reduce that by half, the amount of profit that they would put to the bottom line. So people who were maybe leaving for a certain amount of money, if they could just cut that in half,
Mhm.
meaning that they would actually they wouldn't leave unless it was double the amount. Um,
Right.
because they actually felt some stickiness to the organization. Like, I really like working here, and in order for me to leave, it's going to take at least twice what they're currently leaving for. So you can say, talking about the actual impact and a dollar value is crass, and it probably is. But we're actually able to start quantifying things. They say it actually is something you can get your arms around. And just a manager never talking to employee, being rude
Mhm.
to employee,
Mhm.
there's a cost to that. And
Yeah.
it takes the same amount of time to be nice as it and kind as it does to be rude. It truly does.
Right.
And in fact, there's a lot more energy expended by, yelling and screaming at people. That's not a new factoid for anybody.
Right, right. But this is, I mean, but what I love about it is it's brilliant because again, you have this platform, you're collecting all this data. So you
Yes.
can't, we in our work we refer to episodes of engagement. This episode of engagement between person A and person B, you've got data, the time, the date, what was sent, how did the person respond? That's piece data to us, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we're always looking for because like can you identify the positive piece data footprint in an organization, and can you see it grow through time, and then can you connect it to
Yeah.
performance, profitability, if it's going down, what is it actually costing you, because it's adding friction. If you've got people who don't like working with each other and they kind of slow walk a task, I mean, and you're trying to get something out the door,
Sure.
that's a real hard cost, right?
What about
Versus
this,
people
Margarita? We
who are
actually,
collegial and they're just going like, we're like a high functioning team and we enjoy each other and we're
yeah.
creative. And because, one of the things in psychology that we know is that when people are in like this scarcity mindset, you
Mm,
get this tunnel vision, like scarcity, especially like financial scarcity,
right.
it's hard to be creative. And if you feel like you're under siege, it's hard. You just can't access that part of your brain.
Right.
And so for organizations going like, how do we become more innovative? You literally have to create a safe space. It has to be a safe psychological space where people feel secure, they feel understood, they're not going to be
Sure.
under attack.
So
And so many organizations struggle with that.
I'll tell a quick story to that end. I won't mention the client because it's a sensitive topic. But when we looked at the data with one of our clients, one of the topics that showed up with a frequency that was more than um, expected. I'll put it that way.
Mhm.
The topic was experiencing racism as an African American.
Mm,
Showed up as one of the things that a manager was encouraging an employee. So, with that situation, there was real interest.
mhm.
And okay, so we got to figure this one out. Now that we know that something's going on, we got to figure this one out. And
Yeah.
I'll just say, without getting into great detail, they were able to engage with appropriate resources. Um, Three of those situations were happening at work, two were outside of work. And the feedback was that the ability to engage with that situation, a manager being able to actually encourage someone was number one, a really great thing. Because they said before, we didn't really know how to deal with it besides report to HR.
Right.
And so once it gets to HR, then it's clearly gone past the point of trying to roll it back. What
Yeah.
they were able to do though is engage in those situations, and I think it was on all three of them. They were able to come out with a really strong kind of tiger team approach, address it with the employee, let them know they had their back. And the feedback was that, each one of those three situations had a risk profile somewhere between $1 to $1.5 million,
Mm,
just from their own, experience of if
right.
something was to go to, an extensive, lawsuit kind of situation. It could be, a significant financial impact, not just on the employee, but the employees that are working with that person and the like. And it's just interesting to start to quantify potentially $3 million with the ability to start encouraging someone and know how to actually engage in a way that lets the employee know that this is not who we are, right? We will
Right.
stand firmly behind you. And I mean, you have to know, from my perspective, starting a platform on, trying to encourage, when someone actually stood up in at a time in the 80s where, to your point, it wasn't really in fashion. I know what it feels like for someone to have your back. You never forget that. And I think that these employees, got a chance to feel that, right? Where they work. And, the other thing I'll say about this is that it's interesting to see, you talk about a third of your life being spent at work. I assume the other third, one of the other thirds is sleeping, I think is probably what you're thinking. So
Yeah.
what is the other third? The other third is actually engaging with your friends and family. And so we talk a lot about creating a virtuous circle,
Hmm.
right? So if you can practice it at home and practice it at work and then sleep, you start to create this flywheel effect,
Yeah.
right? That it starts to pick up momentum, right? If you don't have to be a different person at work than you are at
Right.
home, wow, I'm actually, the old saying, bring your whole self to work. Well, how about you bring your whole self home? It's okay to be
Right.
kind, right? To your kids. It's okay to be kind to your wife. You don't have to be a
Mhm.
misogynist at home. You don't have to be a misogynist at work. You can actually
Right.
be kind, and it's okay. You don't
Yeah.
have to have this vision of just being a jerk at work because it's the thing that's valued. You can actually get more productivity of actually being kind to men and women. And to
Yeah.
me, that's a powerful benefit of this platform that allows you to do it. Probably not 24 hours a day because you're sleeping, but at least 16 hours a day, right?
Yeah. To me, the power of focusing on building positive engagement in the
Yes.
workplace with your employees, with your stakeholders, all that is that, well, one, just strictly, biz school playbook. It's like, we know who the customer is, right? Because you can say
Sure.
to a company, they go, I have a pain point. I don't have, my employee engagement is low, or, the productivities are, or, whatever it is, or I'm trying to get my head around this diversity and inclusion, and which certainly, we saw a lot of that over the summer with the Black Lives Matter
Hmm.
protests and the marches and everything else. And you see these CEOs take out, the full page ad in the New York Times saying, we believe in diversity and inclusion, and we wrote a check to Black Lives Matter. And I'm going like, okay, that's very performative, but you didn't really do anything. And organizations are grappling, going like, what do we do on Monday morning?
So to
Behaviorally, what do we do?
so to
And
your
so you have a
point,
plan to help with that,
yeah. So to your
right?
point, very directly, um, one of the things I haven't mentioned is that we have what we call collections that
Mhm.
are curated by subject matter experts in different areas. And again, with our corporate clients that are kind of white label, a lot of times they will contract us to help them develop that content in collaboration with their groups like HR. But we now, starting in March of this year, started creating what we call independent collections that anyone can subscribe to, in addition to our 800 that are on the platform for free. It's like, $8 or $9 a month to subscribe to these collections. One of the new collections we'll be launching right before Christmas is called North Star. And North
Mhm.
Star is encouragement for the efficacy of African Americans. And
Mm.
within that collection, there are three sections. One is called The Promised Land, which is all about Black history and those experiences. The second area is called Black Girl Magic. which is
Hmm.
all about encouraging African American females. And then the third area is called You Are Strong. It's about encouraging African American males. And just
Hmm.
that collection, interestingly enough, allows a manager, allows a brother, allows a friend that may not quite understand some of the situations that folks are going through. You can actually now have things that you can send to that person, say to that person that have been created by subject matter experts, along with our algorithms to provide additional context in the situation that you can actually feel really safe about to send to encourage that
Yeah.
person to let them know, you get a quote from Booker T. Washington or someone else that has real insight from the past, and then even people current day, and
Hmm.
that's coming from a white manager to an African American employee. Um, that's like next level, Margarita. Like, it's not expected, right, that the person is going to actually do something or ask a question that's appropriate instead of saying something they regret. And so I don't want to get big
Yeah,
into
because
the
they just
plan.
don't know what to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly I saw
So,
that a lot on social media where white folks were talking to each other saying like we want to be allies, but we don't know how. And of course, not centering the issue on themselves and all these
right.
complicated issues. And as a Hispanic woman, it's like I'm just watching and go like, you know.
Yeah. So,
So
it's funny.
you got to
It's
do something
funny.
with Hispanics
It's
as well, because we experience the same thing. It's sort of like the classic girl when I was growing up, like, but you're not like the other Mexicans, and I go like, I'm not. I know you intended it as a compliment,
right. Oh,
but
when I was in my school, people would say, "Well, James, you're not really black," and I'd be like, "I am, but I'm not really sure, what you mean by that." It's like I was the first impression outside of watching something on TV, and I knew their intention. It got lost in translation. And,
it
and
was
and by the
awkward.
way, we have collections now called Shine Bright: Efficacy for Women. We
Hmm.
have one for senior citizens and retirees, how to
Yeah.
encourage that particular group. We have um, a collection called The New Normal. That's for
Hmm.
LGBTQ.
Hmm.
We have one called Latinx
Hmm.
that we're still trying to
There you go.
build. We're trying to build
Awesome.
that, curation team. So we have a number of folks that are curating on those collections, and we've got about 46 collections that are in process right now from different groups that are focused on things. And the intention, again, is that if you're trying to encourage someone and you want to go beyond kind of the basics and
Yeah.
get more specific about how to be there for that person, you can subscribe to that collection and get additional insights. And every collection usually ranges from 40 to 300 life events. We have
Hmm.
a collection at Vanderbilt Medical right now that
Hmm.
is about 250 life events, and they're using it for encouraging physicians, nurses, and hospital administrators. What's interesting to me is that every article is kind of a 2-minute read. It's all bullet points, but there's
Hmm.
usually three sections. Section one is what that person might be thinking about,
Hmm.
because if you haven't been through it, you don't know what's going on in their head, right?
Right.
The second section is things that might be discouraging to say.
Yeah.
We kind of get that out there, like things you may want to pump the brakes on. Um,
Hmm.
and then the third thing is things you might consider saying. Um, that if you're in the middle of a conversation, I have friends of mine now that say sometimes I would just, when I'm on the phone with someone, I'll be on EncourageX and I'll type in a topic to kind of get my bearings a little bit. If it's a topic,
Yeah.
loss of a loved one, whatever, and then you're able to then put in more information, and then within 5 seconds you get these recommendations. But there was a real um, moment for me. I woke up in the middle of the night thinking we've got to have this 1-page summary, right, to make
Yeah.
sure that people can see, like, okay, so this is what's going on. Because if you don't, even if it's like your first breakup,
Yeah.
it's been a while since I had my first breakup, and if I'm talking to someone who's 16 years old and they're going through their first romantic breakup, I might just blow it off because it's something that I saw on Friends. It's just it's just not helpful, right?
Right.
Just kind of get reoriented around that particular life event and know what might not be good to say, like just, blow it off, or, you're going to fall in love 100 times before you get married. Just, it's just part of those aren't helpful things at the moment, right? Maybe true,
Yeah.
but it may not be something you want to say if you actually want to try to build a stronger relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so intrigued by what you're doing. I just want to look over your shoulder and look at the data and the trends
Yeah.
because, if we can, this emotional intelligence as a service, these training wheels, as people learn to be encouraging. And also the flip side is for people to be able to receive encouragement.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Yeah. And as that becomes, a habit of, oh yes, I know what to say, I know what this dialogue looks like. And then moving up, that ladder and saying, okay, not only am I encouraging, I'm going to be an active ally. I'm going
Sure.
to find, if I see an opportunity that I think is just perfect for you, I'm going to come
Hmm.
and bring it to you, right? Or if I see an opportunity for me to open a door for you,
Right.
that's when things really start happening. And then we can be this virtuous cycle of reciprocation, right?
Yes.
You've done something for me. I, in gratitude, I'm going to do something for you. And then that's how we collectively lift each other up, because it's not a zero-sum game, contrary to what many people think.
Exactly.
Um, there's actually more than enough kindness to go around. There's more than enough to go around, but it's our mindset
Yeah.
that that
It
limits
absolutely
us.
is. It absolutely is. And so, even, one of the pages that I was sharing just a couple days ago with Scott Hamilton, just a brilliant guy, by the way, showing the model of people talk a lot about leadership, right? You need to lead. We need leaders. And our model talks about there's really two steps before you're able to lead. The one right before leadership is influence. If
Mm,
you have influence with a person that you've earned by doing things that make them feel like, I want to be influenced by you, it's a lot easier to lead people that you actually have influence on.
right.
And the step before influence, we call encouragement,
Mhm.
especially if it's done in a personal, authentic, and consistent way. That is the easiest way to earn influence. If you're actually helping people to be empowered, enabled, and all those things, you can
Mhm.
earn influence just by doing those things, especially if, but not always limited to, if the relationship has become fractured or broken, right? It's about building that trust bridge between
Mhm.
two people. That is the thing that gains influence. And unfortunately, I know you and I both know this, that if you want to ruin a relationship, breaking that trust is the fastest way to eliminating or breaking that relationship. By doing something of betrayal or not following through, um, that's where the trust bridge gets broken. And again, encouragement, if you do it in a personal, authentic, and consistent way, it's the fastest way and the most long-term way of building the influence and then becoming the leader that you can possibly become.
So, James, I just hope that every Fortune 500 company adopts your platform, because
From
I
your lips
think
to God's ears, for sure.
because I think that if we can't, I think it could be such a powerful tool to help our country heal
Yes, yes,
and
indeed.
to rebuild the connectedness, rebuild our social fabric, to
Mhm.
start trusting each other. And the way, and we got to do the hard work, right? It's not like it's going to happen overnight, but we've got, if we're going to turn things around in terms of the direction that we've been going in this country, we have to get back to fundamentals of really seeing each other's humanity,
Yeah.
and realizing that your humanity does not take away from me. And
Mm.
if anything, when I invest in you, and you're thriving, that means that you're creating more abundance that perhaps can also be available to me. And so we need to create these relationships where the value that we create is in excess of the cost, whatever that might be.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
well said. Well, that's very well said. And I'll put my own little sprinkles on the cake there that you just baked, I believe that, times people will say, well, when is the best time to encourage someone? And my basic response to that is, the best time to start encouraging someone is before they need it.
Oh yeah.
If you wait until someone absolutely needs it, it won't feel as personal, won't feel as authentic. I mean, you can obviously still do it, but if you're
Mhm.
encouraging before something happens or a situation comes up, you're gonna be the first phone call because you already
Mhm.
have a track record, right, of influence that you've earned, right? And when I talked to my 11-year-old daughter about these topics, she's very old soul. Um, just to hear her
Mhm.
talk about as she's building her own. We have this new term we're still trying to figure out the marketing behind, but today it's called your circle of influence.
Mhm.
So being intentional about who are the people that you want in your circle that is trying to encourage you, right? So your circle of encouragement. If I said influence, I meant encouragement.
Yeah.
And I was asking her, so, who do you want or who do you see in your circle of encouragement? And I was really hoping I was going to make, the list or the circle, right? She's like, well, it's mommy for sure. And of course you, dad, because you're the chief encouragement officer. You're always encouraging me. But some people I thought would be on the list didn't make the list. And I asked her, like, so what about, so and so? She said, well, she doesn't really influence me, dad. I just think that she's doing some things in her life that, that's not something I want to be a part of. I said, well, that's fair. She's like, there's some things about what she does, but I'm not
Mhm.
old enough to be doing those things anyway right now. So she's not in my circle right now. And I thought, my goodness, you know, um, to hear her actually take my concept as an 11-year-old and start to really think about who is in her circle of encouragement.
Mhm.
Um, and by the way, it was not just people that she wants to encourage her. She was actually thinking about people that she wanted to encourage. So she's thinking about her mama, her grandmother,
Mhm.
who is going through a lot of health challenges. Right? So I want to be able to encourage mama, and I also want to be able to encourage one of the kids at school that's getting picked on. Right? Again, this different kid. I don't, you
Right.
know, you never really know if it's nature or nurture, but she's got some things that I wouldn't claim that I've imparted upon her. But it's that idea of creating a circle of encouragement so that you can actively, to your point, make more deposits and create some excess so that people
Yeah.
can really feel the
Yeah.
power of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all about wealth creation, but we need to create relational wealth.
Mm.
When we have
Mm-hmm.
that relational wealth,
Mm-hmm.
everything else is possible. In the absence of that, whew,
I
you're
gotta write that
going
one
through
down,
life
Margarita.
alone.
Relational wealth. I like that.
Yeah. We need to be able to invest in relationships, build relational wealth, build connectedness. Um, you know, there's an over fixation about money in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But you can die, you could be like Scrooge McDuck and die with all the money in the world and be absolutely lonely.
Well, and a great question to that end is, if you have a great relationship with someone, and you ask a simple question like, it, you know, how much would you trade that relationship?
Mhm.
How much would you be willing to exchange that? And
Yeah.
if it's a good relationship, I mean, most people will say it's priceless. I would never trade that. It
Yeah.
was like, okay, so stop and actually just put that in your brain, right? That
Right.
some of your relationships, like you would never want to trade them.
Mhm.
And if in fact it's one of those relationships, we typically say, what are you consciously and intentionally doing to invest
Mhm.
and making sure that that person never has a feeling like you're not um, investing and making sure that they always know that you got their back, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
as soon as you ask that question, like, okay, God, it makes so much sense, right? That a lot of times people we value the most, we'll take for granted because we just kind of know they're going to be there.
Mhm.
But that's a big assumption, I think.
Okay. You need to create EncourageX for men. How do we get like 50% of the men, of the people on your platform to be men?
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we got a ways to go on that, but we thought we'll start with, the traditional marketing of, you know, meeting people where they're at, people that are
Absolutely.
most willing to grab on. And I always tell Chelsea, our head of people, that the influence at times in a relationship, if a significant other says, "Okay, so we're doing this as a family," um, that may be the fastest approach to get men to start to do it. And once they start to feel the experience of what that, um, the benefits of that, that may be
Mhm.
the fastest approach to get men to do it as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
This has been a delightful hour with you, I have to say.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
in terms of, parting thoughts for our listeners, in terms of three things they should learn, change, or do as a result of this conversation.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, I think we should all be more intentional
Mhm.
about encouraging the people that we care about. And again, when I say intentional, I mean do it in a personal, authentic, and consistent way. Social media is great, but most of us feel as if when it's done one to one, that it's just for you, right? And there's no substitute for a very personalized experience.
Mhm.
I think the second thing we should be consciously thinking about is, a lot of times people don't know that we care about them. We may say, well, of course they know that I care about them. Well, not so much. People can't read your minds, right?
Yeah.
Encouragement only becomes encouragement when you actually express it either verbally or one of the love languages. So don't assume that people know that you really care about them unless you actually are intentional about them actually perceiving that. And I think the last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't um, mention that, with all that's going on in the world, as well as our country in particular, um, if you ask most people um, the things that are most important to them, and you give them a multiple choice question, um,
Mhm.
being American, um, being a good friend to someone, um, helping people that need help,
Mhm.
or your political affiliation, most people are actually going to say
Mhm.
that their political affiliation is the last thing they would actually choose, right? It's more about caring for the people that you really care about, and being an American and helping the people you that may actually need a little bit of help. Um, just because something has become the top news story every night, um, doesn't mean that that's what you naturally would think about if you had a choice. And so I would, close by saying that let's all get back to the thing that really makes us human. And I believe it's the ability to relate with one another. And if you don't have ideas on how to relate, encouragement really is, again, the best currency that we can exchange. And it has the highest return and the lowest risk for fracturing or creating, a broken relationship. We just have to make a conscious choice to do it. And we can help.
Fantastic.
And
Thank
we can help.
you so much. I am going to be following what you're doing. I really would love to explore collaboration with you in terms of this piece data footprint that you're creating, because you are collecting piece data in on your platform, and we're going to evangelize and tell everyone about your platform and tell them that they really should use it.
Awesome.
So for listeners, we will have links in the show notes on the platform to learn more about James, what he's doing, the hardest working man in business, but I bet, but he's in the business of I feel good.
Right on. I love it. I love it.
All right. Thank you.